small group of artists that met in my studio on 29th Street on Thursday evenings. So Madonna came, posed for me for a couple of times there, and from that we worked for about a year together. She was a Lower East Side girl, and her look was that. I was inspired by Michelangelo's Sistine Ceiling. I did a whole series of body drawings. From that, I worked on this idea of doing a series of Sibyls.
Strike.
She had this extraordinary way of looking different when she moved, changed the direction of her glance. That led into this more complicated painting. It was a back view of the nude. I wrapped the stuff around her head and it looked like a turban. There was always something very special about her beauty. It's mostly in the eyes, I think. She was very cooperative, but she wouldn't do it for nothing. This was her livelihood. She made a big $10 an hour. Lee Friedlander, who was a very prominent photographer, he would ask me to send him a model every now and then. Madonna was one of the models that I sent to him. He did a whole series of photographs of her. He'd gone to see this film, Desperately Seeking Susan, and he said, "Is that the same Madonna?" And I said, "It was." And it was shortly after that that he sold the photographs to Playboy. I think he got a lot of money for that, too.
Girls cut my jeans, cut the hair short.
First time I met Madonna was when the Gilroy brothers had come on over and catch a rehearsal. They were called Breakfast Club at this point. Dan and Ed, the Gilroy boys, were on guitar, and Madonna was on drums. She wasn't a great drummer, but neither was Ringo. Angie Schmidt was the one on bass. The Gilroys wanted me to come back on bass instead of Angie. Madonna mostly was drumming for like 8 of the 10 songs, and she would come out for her 2 songs as a front person. Madonna literally wanted to actually reverse the whole thing. Instead of her being 20%, she would do 80 and they would do 20. But it was really their band, and they didn't want to go that route. I left the group with Madonna and started a new little group. And we were auditioning drummers, but none of them were working out, so she contacted Stephen Bray. I guess he responded positively because he came to New York.
I think the first time I saw Madonna was 1977 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was a hustle lesson at this discotheque. She likes to say that she offered to buy me a drink, but it was the other way around. It was kind of just a social friendship. After she'd moved to New York, I found out that she wasn't studying dance anymore. She was in a band.
She came to me one day, and she said, "You know, this dancing is difficult. I think I'd like to be a rock singer." She said, "A friend of mine is writing some songs, and we're going to audition them. There's an agent here from Paris." And she left, and I thought, sure, okay, fine. And she came back the next day, and she said, "You know, they took us, and I'm going to Paris next week." I never saw her after that.
She had been hired to be part of the Patrick Hernandez review. Although, you know, it was an interesting experience, she didn't really like it. I think she got a lot of good clothes out of it. But she basically did what she could to antagonize her keepers and get out of there. Because being in the chorus line wasn't in her game plan.
I had made a few films in high school, Super 8 films, and then in 1979, I thought, wouldn't it be a lot of fun to make a feature-length Super 8 film? So I put an ad in Backstage magazine looking for a dominant woman who knows how to act and dance. I was able to attract 400 pretty boring resumes. But there was a photograph that actually dropped out of this envelope. She was putting lipstick on. I looked at it and thought that my fantasies were being realized. And I read her resume. It was a 3-page handwritten letter.
Dear Stephen, I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, where I began my career in petulance and precociousness. By the time I was in 5th grade, I knew I either wanted to be a nun or a movie star. 9 months in a convent cured me of the first disease.
That made me realize in about 3 seconds that this is the person that I wanted for this movie. I was interested in exploring a theme of revenge.
Do you think for
lover of mine could be tamed. Right now, they're like irritated hornets, and they want to sting, and that's why I'm scared.
She was very directable. She would do what she was asked to do, and then make it into what she wanted to.
We're all caught in this vacuum of dominance and submission.
There was a scene that began as a sketchy idea.
Stop it, all of you!
What would it be like to imagine this dominatrix type person with 3 lovers, and she tells them she no longer wants to be their dominatrix?
My relationship has to end.
And what would the reaction be? Madonna pretty much took it from there. They kind of wrestled with each other in a sort of improvised, choreographed scene, kind of in slow motion of them all sort of tangling with each other. It's fairly erotic. There were moments when things would happen in front of a camera that were just remarkable.
There he is, you guys!
The highlight of making the movie was renting a limousine, riding around Times Square with these crazy people, having a lot of fun. She and Angie were really good friends. The skylight was open in the limousine, so the sun was coming down on them. All of a sudden, they just break into this rendition of Let the Sun Shine. It's quite fetching, actually, but of course, it had no place in the movie. She had to pay her rent one month, and she said she wanted to get paid. There must have been 200 people that were involved in this movie, and the only person that was paid was Madonna. I said, all right, Madonna, if I pay you $100, you need to sign a release. At that time, I hadn't had people sign releases. Again, you have to understand the level of professionalism here. So she signed the release. I finished the movie in 1984. Coincidental with that finishing, Madonna was starting to become famous. I called Madonna up and I said, well, Madonna, I finally finished the film. She came over to my apartment, and I enjoyed watching the movie. She was positive. She liked it. But then she said, F you when she left. And I said, well, F you too. In 1985, Madonna sued me to stop the movie, and I had her sign release, which was a critical piece of paper, and the best $100 that I ever paid.
I don't think anyone made Madonna. I think Madonna made Madonna.
Just listening to her, I had no doubt in my mind that she would be able to attain everything she aspired for.
There was no pretense in what she was doing. It wasn't, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be that. It's more like, I am this.
I called Madonna to say, hey, I'm coming to New York. She had this band. She said, well, I need a drummer. I've got a set full of tunes, and I actually have gigs. Now, I don't think she really did have the gigs at the time. We hooked up on the corner of 38th Street and 8th Avenue. There's this building converted to rehearsal studios. Madonna had secured a lock, and we went up, and she played me the songs that they had, and we just kind of jammed the first day. I was excited to find that she had written some solid songs.
It's like, what are we going to call ourselves? Let's just call ourselves Madonna. It's a catchy name. It's kind of rock and roll. But Steve hated that. No, I'm not going to play in a group called Madonna. And she said, well, if we can't call it Madonna, my nickname used to be Emmy, so we'll call it Emmy.
Her performance was probably, you'd grade it a 10 for energy and enthusiasm. She belted. She screamed.
Shut the f up! Do you actually believe I could ever let you go?
The magnetism theory of rock and roll was that, you know, get really good and find a record label A&R person that would say, oh, you guys are the cat's meow, and we kind of sucked. I mean, we didn't suck bad, but we weren't that good. After a crashing, thunderous ending, there'd be, you know, you kind of hear that. 3 or 4 people's hands clapping.